Hello, Saints fans. Um, Hell of a rough one today. Insanely stupid, historically bad. We're going to cover all that. Um, with possibly a bit of good news and a ray of hope, maybe. So we can talk about that, and I can walk you through what I may have figured out today. Because right now I'm looking for anything that could possibly be hopeful. Um, Pop this one up because I saw it when I was getting everything ready that Northern had had asked, "How do we lose?" Honestly, I don't know. Because it's historic, epic bullshit of proportion that has not been seen in the NFL in recent years or as far back as anybody can find. What happened today, it is the biggest embarrassment that I can think of ever in my time as a Saints fan. And yes, I am including the 1 in 15 bad years. I mean, it started out, and I think whoever originally sent this, I caught it on Twitter right after the game. Was watching the game with the sports accountant brother-in-law. Game ends. We're kind of, I wouldn't say aggravated because, well, he was, but I could kind of see typical pattern how this game was going. And at no point this week did I feel comfortable we were going to walk in and beat a team we actually should have beat. And true to form, we were okay for most of the first half. We started falling apart. It just kept going downhill faster. We lose the lead. We managed to pull our shit together for a little while, take a lead. But in the last 4 minutes of that game, I'm like, here we are again. Another Dennis Allen head coach team up by a score with less than 4 minutes to go, knowing we were going to find a way to lose that game. And sure as shit, we did. So I was numb at that point more than aggravated because it was just like I knew it was coming. See it a mile away, seen it too much, saw it twice already earlier this year. So, but how we lost this game to Northern's question, I don't have a damn clue. Because as soon as walked out and I grabbed my iPad and let me see what they're throwing around on Twitter. This was already up that prior to 2020. So whoever came up with this stat, I think was planning on it somewhere in that last 4 minutes of the game, going just like I was. Ah, shit, here we go again. We've seen this song and dance before. We know how it ends. But prior to 2022, when the Saints rushed for 195 yards or more with zero turnovers, just like today, they were 12-0. Since DA got hired in 2022 with those same stats, we're 0-2. You're like, okay, probably most of those games were with Sean, but I don't know because they didn't break it down. They just threw that out there. But then it got really bad because in the very next one I saw, since 2003, so 2 decades plus a couple of years, teams with a positive turnover margin, and we were +1 today, rushed for 150 plus yards. We actually ran for 197. And then total yards, 150 more or over yards than your opponent. And our total yards were 427. Theirs was 246. Those teams since 2003 that managed to do those three things in a game were 354-0. That record is now 354-1 because we managed to find a way to fuck that up. Where 354 teams before us, they figured out, hey, that's a win. I don't even want to go look at what the scores were in games like that. But even if this would fall into the category of what I said in the video earlier this year. If we on that last drive would have managed to get down the field, Groupie bangs a field goal to win the game and with no time left, I'd have still been where I am now. When you look at those numbers, it never should have been a ball game. So Northern, to answer your question, I don't have a goddamn clue how we lost that game because it never should have happened. Which is a fine time to segue into Larry Edwards' question. Uh, I don't know at this point. I have checked Twitter several times this afternoon and tonight, and a little while ago. I wanted to do it right before we went live because I keep expecting to see the news that he's going to be fired tomorrow, or he was he was fired in Charlotte or whatever, but nothing. So I don't even know anymore because if what happened today isn't enough, I don't know what it takes. I, I don't. This is the point where I'm no longer numb, but starting to get worked up because the next two things that I don't want. I do not want to hear Loomis with any more of his bullshit about you got to look beyond the results. Shut up. I have no time for Mickey Loomis and those comments, which, by the way, if you are on Twitter and follow Cat Terrell, earlier last week, revisited, or it might have been the week before, revisited these comments, and she managed to pull several times over the years since he first became GM, because I think the first one she found was 2004, where he used some version of looking beyond the results. Another one was the end of last season, or his first comments this season in 2004, had another very similar phrase. He is literally the broken record that just keeps skipping and saying the same words over and over again. I'm done with Mickey. And Mickey's the first one that needs to go. As bad as DA needs to have been fired and should have been fired already, Mickey actually is the one that I want to hear. Miss Gale, you have to get involved and you have to put an end to this. Mickey's got to go. DA's got to go. Probably the majority, if not 100% of that front office needs to be cleaned out and just keep working on downward. I'm going to say this, that, well, before we get there, the other thing I don't need is to hear Dennis Allen's voice ever again. I don't give a shit what he has to say. I don't care what comes out of his mouth anymore. Zero. It's all crap. It's all useless. And I feel like the more he spouts off at any time in front of a camera and or a microphone, this team automatically gets worse. That if he would just shut up and not talk at all for a whole solid week, I feel like our chances of victory would go up. And I ain't even joking on this. Swear to God, I think the sound of his voice deteriorates our roster and our team and our ability to play football. I think it's his superpower. I talk, these guys keep fucking up more. And we managed to do what one team in 355 tries since the year 2003 has done with the numbers we put up today, and managed to lose a freaking game. So I see some questions popping up. I'm going to get there in a second because I really want it to try hard to find. There's got to be something somewhere in this game that's good news. Oh my God, it was so hard to find, which is amazing considering the actual numbers we were just talking about we were putting up. Because even you want to look at Alvin, a lot of people were naming him player of the game. And look, not to bang on Alvin. I mean, 155 rushing, 60 receiving, had a hell of a game. But I can't get out of my mind, not once but twice, he pulled the Mark Ingram into the first half when we truly needed to keep the clock running. If we couldn't gain yards and get down the field and get points, he runs out of bounds. Second half of the game, in that last 4 minutes, similar situation comes up again. He runs out of bounds. At least Ingram only did it once to lose to Tampa Bay. And it's really, I mean, I'm not saying those two plays caused us to lose. No, it was a group effort by everybody who was on that field, coaches, players, everything. But The story of this game is he did some incredible things, and really 2 plays did hurt us, did hurt our chances to win, despite every other play he made on the field was in the direction of bringing us a victory. You know, um, Shamar Jean Charles had one of the most unbelievable interceptions I've ever seen a Saint have. And you're going, God, you should be able to hang your hat on that. But he was part of the missed tackles and some screwed up coverages that got us in trouble and helped Carolina out. So it's hard to go, I, man, he made an insane play. And we've been begging for people to make plays in these last few weeks. And somebody finally steps up and does it, but he offsets it with enough stuff that hurts us. And you can go down the list. Alante Taylor, 4 total tackles, 3 PBUs. He's flying all over the place, but he was another victim of a missed tackle that was costly to us. Pete Werner, I thought, was playing like a demon. 8 total tackles, 1 for a loss. But at times, they're in this kind of in coverage again, which I know is not his forte, and probably boo on us for keep trying to ask him to do it. But still, there was a couple of times when it's like shit. Um, Foster Moreau, again, another highlight reel catch that was just absolutely insane. But you kind of look at some of the offensive struggles, and he was part of sometimes the offensive line. Not a big part. There were worse. Trevor Penning had his turn today of the offensive lineman that repeatedly started doing stuff to kill us in the game. But he was a bit a part of that. But for the most part, it's like, him and Blake Groupie are probably the 2 I come up with the most, because Groupie was perfect on the day and banged a 51-yarder. And it's like, I almost feel like Hayball too, because he had one of the best first down runs we had all day on the fake punt. So even some of the past games, I didn't really do it when we were doing post game, but we knew that there was instances you could look around at the team and go, all right, that's something we can kind of hang our hat on. That's not today. There was nothing. Even the good things are so tainted by the actual performance that was given and the outcome of this of a game against a team like Carolina. Good Lord, if something like this would have happened against Kansas City or Baltimore or Detroit, you'd be like, well, shit, at least I get it. They're the, 3 of the best teams in the NFL. Yeah, Carolina is one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL, and so are we. Donna is available to replace DA. Actually, I had this thought earlier today. I think right now, Ms. Gale could fire Mickey and DA, hop in a car, go to Audubon Zoo, walk in, talk to the zookeeper, and go, who's the 2 most intelligent animals? I don't care what they are in this place, because I want to hire them to be coach and GM, and I think they could do a better job. The non-facetious, yet I am kind of serious, because I'm feeling that way, that yes, anybody could do a better job than them. And speaking of Miss Gale, if she's team owner, she can do what she want. I'm not, but I'm just stating what I feel like is going on. It's just not a vested interest in keeping a real close eye on things, what's going on with the team, which is okay. There are owners like that, varying degrees of success. But what you need to do is get Ron Wolf used to be the big name guy that is kind of a consultant, I guess, for better or for worse. Used to go around teams and with owners and going, look, we're a mess like the Saints currently are. Start getting some information that way. Start trying to make some informed decisions of hiring one guy who knows what he's doing to show up and run the show that answers directly to her. And just occasionally, let's take a look at what's going on. And is it going in the right direction or in the wrong direction? Sometimes it's hard to tell, but I don't think there's anybody right now that's a Saints fan that's looking what's been going on this whole year and in previous years going, yeah, this is all heading in the right direction, because it isn't. So I wish I could give you a specific answer. And this is the kind of question that kind of bopping around in the back of my head the last few weeks that yes, actually, I would probably likely have to pay more attention to, and maybe at some point I can. But right now, just about anybody on the planet, I think that's available could be better. Trey, how can we shed Loomis up now? Season ticket holders funds have been allocated. I mean, um, yeah, I'm not really sure on that one. Um, to your point, I can see a world we're living in that I didn't think as far as 5 years ago we were, where people are going to start walking away from the Saints just because um, I, I am no longer a season ticket holder. I was once. In fact, another family member has my two that I used to have, so I get to sit in them every now and again. But if I was a season ticket holder, I would feel absolutely betrayed by most of the stuff that they've been doing. Almost feeling like they're taking advantage of me. Hey, we just want your money and your support. We want you to show up and yell and scream when we tell you to. Um, don't look behind the curtain and see what's really going on in the organization. Um, you know, look beyond the results. So I think they're assumed that they were untouchable and that this team was not going to wind up in areas with the fan base that other teams have wound up in as far as season ticket holders, support, and everything else. I'm pretty sure they're in for a super rude awakening, probably this Sunday when Atlanta rolls into town. Um, because anybody who's going to the Atlanta game on Sunday, don't be surprised if you're heavily as a Saints fan in the minority of fans in that stadium. Jeez. Uh, I don't know her personally, but right now the way she's handling the team, it's not encouraging, and that's what kind of sucks in this whole deal is she's the one person that could start the ball rolling and fix it, and until she decides to do it, again, I'm feeling taken advantage of. Just like she's, well, we're fine. I don't mean this in a mean way, but I guess it is a mean way. I just don't want to say this, but I think it's right. I think there's too many people top down, and it's filtering through the front office, the coaching staff, and some players who all this is to them right now is go pick up a game check or go pick up a check type thing. Yeah, Caribbean. Um, I I can't see even firing who we I think we're all in agreement needs to be fired. Um, I- at this point, I mean, if a couple weeks ago you might have re-energized fan base and into the dome, but I don't even think that's going to cut it. I think it's going to be a long it's going to be a long process that they could have avoided. And for whatever reason, they decided not to. I mean, I can speculate all the live long about why. I think arrogance is a big part of it, and I think stupidity is a big part of it. But beyond that, I don't know what else. I think, um, and I'm assuming you're not that DA, but the DA you're talking about, yeah. Ultimately, to get to the point where we're at now, it's a top down problem because DA's a problem because Mickey's kept on allowing this to go on. Mickey's a problem because he's the same Mickey. He's just doing literally the same things over and over every season. They gave I think now looking back on it, we were a little excited. Hey, looks like we're getting some change, some of the stuff we need change. I think it was a half-hearted, dishonest effort, really. Yeah, it was just lip service. I don't think they really um I think players and some coaches at times bought into it, but I'm talking about the decision makers on the I don't know if they really bought into it, and they're just not thinking, "No, eventually we're gonna do stuff the way we wanna do it," because that's what worked for us in the past, what is becoming the distant past. But ultimately, to allow those 2 to keep doing what they're doing, Miss Gale's the one that has to fire him. So, I mean, ultimately, sooner or later, it's going to wind up on the owner's doorstep if they're not gonna step up and get involved and do something about it. I I said this at some point recently. Now, I again don't know her personally, and I don't want to attack her personally, but I always got the impression, kind of like the grandmother, your favorite great aunt or whoever, just a nice person that you kind of would enjoy socially being around. So that's why I don't want to do anything personal to her. I do believe that about her. But at the same time, what's the expression? Personal is personal, business is business. What you're really talking about here is business. In the business is failing horribly right now. And the only way you're going to fix it is you're going to have to go in and make changes, and you're going to have to cut out the problems. The next two names are your two biggest problems right now. They're not the only ones. There's more in the front office. I just can't tell you who they are, but they should know. And some of that should have already been rooted out. Jeff Ireland could be one. It probably is, but I don't know that for sure. I, my opinion only. Nothing fact based to back it other than I think the drafts and some of the scouting and all that we've done has not been very good in them lately. I can't argue that. I did see one in 15. Now I was young. I was very young, so it's more of impressions than clear memories. I find it hard to believe they were worse than what I'm looking at right now. It's hard to believe there's ever been a professional team. I'm sure there has, but I can't think of any that is playing worse than we're playing and going through the motions and everything that's happening than we are right now. If he owns 51%, he is. If he doesn't, no, he's not. Now he may not be able to fire him, but whoever does own 51% can sure as hell take the power away from him and give it to somebody else. Now he may still be on the payroll or stuck in the building, but if you've ever seen Office Space, he can be Milton. You can stick him in the basement, take his stapler away, and he's irrelevant. He's in the building, but he's irrelevant. Yeah, that's what it's coming to. I hate to say it, but that may be the only thing that they stand up and notice. Okay, that's the bit of good news I was talking about earlier that I'm gonna run through a little later. It's possible. Realistic world, maybe 2 years, but you need a lot of things to go your way. Um, and I'll pull up overthecap.com. That's they have a little system there and a calculator that makes it kind of easy. But I will say this, and this is the second part after we kind of get to some decisions. If you want to do that, they have to be made in the next 2 days. And if it's not made, and it's the logical decision, but let's play smarter Saints. What are we going to do in the next 2 days? Are we going to do the smart thing or are we going to do the Saints thing? Recent history shows we're damn sure going to do the Saints thing. So if you want to start this year, you might be able to by 2025. You can. I figured out a way. We'll go over it. Might be possible to give you some relief, but if you don't start, then you're going to basically be starting in 2025. So you're probably looking more like 2026 before it really helps you. Um, if it goes badly or you get a little unlucky, it's 2 years easy. Then you screw anything up, that turns into three. We've seen teams continue the screw up and they never really get themselves right. New York Giants come to mind. Yeah, I feel like they think we're all stupid at this point. I think a lot of my anger comes from the fact that um, they're treating us like a bunch of 8-year-olds. You know, like no, it's tiresome, and I'm really getting done with the whole thing. I know that's an interesting question. Now, somebody threw in the comments, I think I read it today or last night, about bringing up John Gruden's name, which my initial reaction was cringe, but I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, or a Gruden like the scowling, pissed off Chucky Gruden showing up here, for lack of a better phrase, kicking ass and taking names. I think we do need some of that. Um, I think some veterans have been trying to do it. I don't think they get the support from the head coach they need. Hence, we didn't have a players only meeting last week, but we had the team captains. I think some of that stuff was discussed because I think some of them would really, but if your head coach can't lead, um, there's only so much your players can do. Now, I know he's coaching another team right now, but I can pretty much damn well guess if it's not happening yet, and they got their ass waxed by Baltimore today, but Denver hung in there a little longer than I thought they would. Um, Sean, I think, was the leader, the unquestioned. He was the top dog. No bullshit. I ain't taking none of it. But also, Tom, I think he did empower his players to be leaders. You know, now I don't know what the dynamic is exactly. I was never in the locker room, but I never really truly felt like when he was here, the Saints had a real leadership issue from the team. Definitely not from the head coach. So I feel like Dennis Allen's lack of leadership in total, I don't know what the hell he's trying to do half the time. So even the guys who are trying to do it, they're not empowered to do it. There's just too many players who literally feel like they have the option, man. Screw you. I don't have to listen to anything you say. The head coach ain't enforcing nothing and holding us accountable. Why should I listen to Demario or Cam or Honey Badger or whoever? I'd be shocked if at least there isn't a small amount of players that are thinking and doing that in the locker room, and I'd be shocked and hard to believe that that number doesn't grow every time shit like today happens. You didn't say next week the Saints fans, so I'm guessing that's what you mean, but I kinda had to laugh because I don't know if the team itself, if the 53 decided, "Screw this, we're boycotting this until, they do something about this," and they boycott the game and not show up. Yeah, I know that would never happen, but, you know, I'm just getting the middle end of season ticket holders, fans, and the team all holding pickets in the picketing the dome, going, "No, we're not going in there until you start getting rid of some of the major problems who that we all know who they are." But yeah, no, I agree. There's going to be a lot of people selling their tickets to Falcons fans this week. I'm going to be shocked if it doesn't happen. I'll be more than shocked. I'll just be totally floored. What's up, Trey? Um, I'm sure somewhere there is the question, or I think the more complete question is a competent GM that knows what the shit they're doing, um, that can handle cleaning up the cap and all the draft busts. Um, Now who that is, I don't know. And I could probably kind of guess the head coaches or GM's front office because very few. Well, Mickey likes to get front and center every chance he gets and get in front of a microphone and say stupid shit, but most GMs don't. Um, and then when you really get down to probably what you're looking at is an assistant GM, one of those, up and coming guys type things, or think about what Frisco did, bringing in John Lynch to get their turner because they were in a very similar boat, middle of the 20 teens. Their ownership went with we're giving John Lynch and basically Kyle Shanahan 6 years to turn this shit around. They did it much faster than that. And then once they got the cap issue and all fixed, and they could do stuff like, yeah, what we're missing is a Christian McCaffrey. Go in and bring him in and make NFC Championship run in the first year, and then a run to the Super Bowl. Um, so I guess there could be an outside a guy like a Lynch does that you could bring in. The real thing is our ownership has to get with the people who know and sit down and almost the consultants almost and sit down and have some real meaningful conversations and make some really tough decisions and probably take some risks that as an organization we don't normally like to take. But now I'm not saying go crazy, but I mean you might have to take the shot on that one person to find somebody what you're talking about, because to me, a person who would be in this shot at the GM or head coach um would probably shy away from these jobs right now. But there have been teams like the Lynch example. There have been teams in this situation. They managed to find the people to do it. So we just going to have to manage to find the people that can do it. Yeah. But again, if he's got 5%, yeah, you can't fire him as an owner, but you can sure as hell fire him as an employee. Trust me on that. You can strip his power. And unless the will specifically states, and I've heard this too, and people have shown the will, and A, I'm not a lawyer, and B, I don't know how accurate any of that shit is they're talking about anyway. But if it says he has control, then we're all fucked. Then we just literally, if he has control that nobody can take away from him to run this team until he chooses to step away, I'm going to start looking for a new team to follow, because that will be the minute that I'm like, we're totally fucked. This will never get turned around. We're done. So if you're right, then it's going to be a living hell as long as that's in place. Ah, absolutely. He had help, but yeah, this whole the more I think about it, we talked about this in the past. The more I think about how the NFL is evolving so fast. It used to do it slow. It used to take years when something innovative came in before other people try it, because their first reaction was, "No, that won't work. It's a fad. It's going to go out of phase." Then they finally get around to figuring out ways to stop it, and it would start to work as a stop. And then the offense or the defense or whatever changes, and the other side of the ball. But it was always a very slow process. But you're seeing this shit every couple of years, just the new revolutionary thing almost, or the type of players you need to bring in. Um, Defensive linemen getting smaller and faster for the most part. Yeah, offensive linemen becoming more athletic and less about bulldozing people. But teams adjust, and sooner or later, somebody gets in front of the curve. They're not following, going, well, if everybody starts doing this and everybody starts figuring out the solution, then we have to be the first innovative team to take the next step. And I think there's teams out there proactively trying to do that. We ain't one of them. We just want to keep it as it was, because it was successful for us in the late 20 teens. God knows it was successful for us from 2009 to 2011. That brand of football is dead and gone for a little while. It may eventually come back as these changes keep happening. And somebody goes, we need big five powerful offensive linemen. We're going to run straight ahead with a big giant running back, go 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and just try to take our chunk shots down the field. But I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Uh, he is the one. Like I said, the potential good news. It all evolves around him. But I think I got a couple more. We can jump in and talk about that for sure. Oh God, the list is massive. Bill Koharic, when he was just our success stories are shorter than our failures by far. Yeah, that's the thing that I heard originally. That but Louch is not a hands-on operational. That's supposed to be Loomis's gig. But my understanding was Gale could definitely depower him at the least. And Louch is like the trusted right hand man. I think he was for Tom Benson too. I think because he handled a lot of his stuff. So um, I don't know if he has decision making power, but I feel like he has Gail's ear at least. At least he might be the guy that would go, all right, let me go figure out who we need to hire, talk to the right one. Just tell Gail, look, you got to suck it up, fire Mickey and fire Dennis Allen. And these are the guys we need to start interviewing to hire. He may be the bridge between the two, but if he is, God, he's got to get involved. Yeah, but I don't think like they think. I just and look, it's expensive to go to games now. And that's going to play a part of it too. If you want to keep reaching in your pocketbook to do that. Now, some people don't care, and some people, the game is nothing about the game itself. If you've ever noticed, that's just they're there for the drinking and the partying and the all that stuff. I'm sure some of those are real fans. A lot of them probably aren't. But even then, if the game's total crap and not fun, I don't know if they'd still go. And that's I think the area you're really approaching right now. Yeah, anybody that could um again piss off Chucky Face on the sideline and just people have to players have to start feeling uncomfortable about their jobs. Now part of that is part of them that well they can't get rid of me because of cap issues and all that other stupidity too. But if you can work that out, but also if you're going to try to do that, some of these young players, impressionable players, on first year deals, the way the money involved, you you almost you've got to keep a bunch of those because they're going to have to be on your roster to be able to work through all the cap issues. And you need to get instilled to them the fear of not being here, getting cut, and possibly not getting an NFL job, or instill the urgency in them. Maybe a better way to say it that, hey, I've got a shot here. Let me roll out there. They're rebuilding this thing and showing I need to be part of this rebuild. And while they're doing that, you're getting a salary break until it's time for them to worry about the next contract. And if they've done enough to prove, and yeah, he's worth another contract, you keep him. If not, it doesn't cost you almost nothing to let him walk. And I think Gruden or anybody like him is the leader that can at least start getting that in line and maybe and probably getting some veteran players to get on board. And I don't mean like the veteran leader types. I mean the veterans who are not doing so much what they should. I swear sometimes I think he's a robot and a badly programmed one at that. I haven't either. Hey, God knows the last what 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. There's been plenty of opportunity to see that, but no, Carlton. I get the impression he feels like everything's okay. Um, it's not okay, Dennis. It has never has been, and nobody seems to want to call him on it or do anything about it. Yeah, I figured that, but like I said, I could just imagine the team going, "Screw it, we're on board with the fans with this. To hell with this. We're not going to the game today either." I don't know if I could blame them if they thought that. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, his arrogance is a whole new level of arrogance that I you just don't see every day. It's almost like that's his superpower, just being an arrogant SOB that you know, just really believes he's right and doing the right thing and everything's working out according to plan and it's all good and you people just need to stop asking me questions or getting mad about it because I know what I'm doing because I'm Mickey Loomis. Um, yeah, terrible, and that kind of thing. Because in a weird sort of way, how much of that arrogance is trickling down through the organization, and where is it showing up? And especially when they think they're protected like he is, or because he gave a player a terribly horrible contract that we can't get out of, and that player sitting there going, "I'm here no matter what." Um, and if you don't have a losing culture, doing a lot of the stuff that Mickey did, obviously promotes it, and pretty much that losing culture is well, it'll lead you to 7-game losing streaks. Um, he's an interesting because again, I'm not in the front office. My assumption is he's just doing what he's told. Um, we want these players. We need to pay him this amount of money. You need to figure out a way to make it work. I kind of feel like that's what's been going on. I hope I'm right because if you change the mentality and walk up to him and go, Kai, okay, all this shit you've been doing for years that has gotten us, okay, we need to fix it. How do we fix it? Do you know how to fix it? He probably does. What do we need to do? There's almost a world we live in. Jason mentioned this last week that he may be the best. If you fire Mickey, he may be the best interim general manager just so he can get the mandate from Ms. Gale and Dennis Laucher going, fix the cap, start now. How can we do it? It's the most efficient way. Um, Now, as long as he isn't the one promoting this idea, selling it, and resisting to changing it, we're good. I would say, yeah, I like Kai Hartley. But if, look, what needs to be done, anybody who's in the organization that even gives a hint of not wanting to do it and pushing back against it probably needs to go work for another organization. I don't care about the okay. I'm gonna put it to you this way. Probably the best place to start is losing on purpose, especially when you already have a losing mentality holding in, is just going to make it worse. And that's just more you got to fix. So you want to do the opposite. You want to make the big push. Hey, we're going to win every game. You want to give these guys a reason. That's what I'm saying. Like these younger players who you might just have to keep around on the roster. So you got to motivate them and you got to get them out there. The reality of the situation is this team is such a shit show right now. It's going to be really hard to actually win games and meaningfully screw up your draft pick. I don't see any way we're not a top 5. I'm not really seeing where. I think we might luck into 1 or 2 wins some kind of way. So maybe we're a 4-13 team. I can't see it any better than that. I can also see where we end up the season as a 2-win team. So top 3. But here's the second part of that. We could lose every game, do whatever we do, wind up with the first overall pick. Right now, the way this organization is set up, they're going to fuck up that pick. I guarantee you. Guarantee you it will do us no good. So that's why I say I don't really care where the picks are or what's going on till we fix the problem of actually drafting better. Recognizing that the colleges are producing, and there's some articles out there floating around on this conversation. I tend to agree with it, producing less and less NFL ready players where they're just going to show up. They're going to blow through OTAs and training camp and show up on the field. They are out there, and teams have found them, and a lot of them are playing right now. And I wish to God we had them, but we don't. But I think the biggest group of it is, so this is the hand in hand part. They're not ready the day you draft them, but you can have them ready. Think of Alvin Kamara by week 2, his rookie year. Um, he was ready to go. Like Sean needed, or week 3, whenever it was, he finally started. We traded Adrian Peterson and started giving him the ball. And that's part of it going. They may need a little time to develop. But if we do it right, we can get them on the field this year. Maybe they're a starter and they're a stud like Alvin proven to be. Maybe they're a role player where we get meaningful snaps and some real production out of them in the stuff they can do well. And then we get a whole season. I'm going to bring up an example in a second. Then we get a whole off season instead of having to start in May of doing all the stuff we need to get him ready in year 2. Because I'm going to bring up Fuaga. I like a lot of the stuff that he does, but he's a rookie. He's struggling, and he's on the left side, and he's had to kind of do it on the fly, and he's had basically half an off season to figure out to do it. And everybody thought he could do it, and I'm not saying he can't or it won't come together for him. And the back issues that he had for a while too probably didn't help anything either. But in retrospect, seeing how the season played out, it might have been better since Penning, as bad as it was, had some limited experience on the left side. Maybe start them in their natural positions. And at some point during the season, if you saw the ability to be able to switch them and in the development, you don't really want to hurt Fuagas at the expense of Penning. If one of them has to have a slower development, I feel like it's probably Penning over Fuaga, but regardless, maybe that swap happens during the year. Maybe you look at it and you go, it's going to have to wait till the offseason. We're going to need them both a full to work. So you need all that stuff to come together to take the right draft pick. So once you take them, you're getting the right guys in. If you know they're NFL ready on the day of the draft, then you get them ready to be starters from that point on. If you think we need a little bit developed, what can we get out of them? If the answer is no, they need like a whole year or possibly even 2 to get to that point. And I think we've drafted a lot of guys high in the first and second round that fall in that category when they should have been drafted later in the draft. So when you clear all that up, I'll care more where the draft picks actually are. To increase your chances, once you can recognizing and know you can develop them, then it increases your chance to getting those guys. So I think right now, putting forth the effort to win, regardless that it probably won't happen, start getting the culture changed around and get the front office cleaned up. And then ideally, yeah, you got some high enough draft picks where you can, if a Jaden Daniels is sitting there and you got him and you're able to pull what Washington off is doing right now, then you can do it in 1 year. But you need a guy of that level to be able to do it. I wish I could answer 100. I wish I could answer 50, but I'm still amazed he had a job to go to. Yeah, I mean that's what I just keep wrapping my head around is it really could have happened after the Denver game, that little mini bye week. It didn't. They want to stick around. You saw, well, we're getting these players back healthy and blah blah blah, and then we're going to get Carr back possibly the next week, and that was kind of like the selling point. It didn't get any better. It got worse against San Diego. It definitely got worse today. So really, the answer to that should be 100%. It should have happened already. And the longer it takes to happen, the more and more I get worried that it's not going to happen. If it doesn't happen, God help us all. Yes. No, I'm not interested anymore in self-promoting from within for GM. Um, Not so much on the coaching staff. Which yes means you could possibly have a complete overhaul entire of your coaching staff. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. And I do know we have some good assistants, especially on the offensive side. I was very pumped on Kubiak. I don't want to say I'm think he's hopeless. I don't, but a lot of the shine's off. But they're the side of the ball with the injuries and all the problems and everything else. And look, really some roster liabilities beforehand that you really want to give them a pass. And if our defense was playing better and DA was doing his job, where right now we're sitting right around 500, where last 2 years we've been sitting, but you're seeing some good signs from the offense like we do at times. And then you see them getting healthier and really getting better, then you go, okay, we can see this through. But I don't know if we're seeing that. So I'm almost to the point. Yeah, I think you need to clean house and everything needs to come from without the organization. For lack of a better word, you don't want the tainted culture you have developed trying to keep the old culture in place to linger at all. I mean, you need a full exorcism and just everything. So, um, yeah, Saints for life. I got to agree with you, GM, but all the way through the process, I think, yeah, we got to look hard outside the building. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's not one or two. It is a conscious group effort. It really is. Um, the culture's rotten. I mean, it really is. I think you would be, and it sucks because there's like I said, some like I'd love to keep our offensive line coach around if we could. Our wide receivers coach. I think they've done some good things in some very tough positions. I'd like to see them get an honest start with, actual healthy, capable NFL players and see what they can do. And they have reputations of being very good at what they've done, and they've been in a lot of places where they were. So, Clancy Barone, our tight end coach, is another one. Um, but I don't know if you can afford to keep them around. If you hire a new GM who hires a new coach, ultimately they're going to make the call. But it it's definitely some of the others that you got to get rid of, and sometimes you might just have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. And just we got to start over. Um, yeah, Mickey's the GM on the operational side. Some kind of I don't know what his title actually is, but he functions as the basically the general manager. So, uh, Laucha, at various times has run various things. That's what I said. I know he's been with the Bensons a long time, so he's kind of the, but not directly related at all to any of the operational stuff going on in the Saints or the Pelicans or anything like that. He's more like a CEO, really, or I mean, rather a chairman of the board type thing. Do we apologize to Mike T yet? Who's Mike T? Oh, Mike Thomas. I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole. Um, there's a lot of blame to go around in that whole situation that for everybody involved, including ex-coach and players that are no longer on the roster. That whole, I think that was just handled poorly by everybody. Continued to handle poorly, and I would say this about Michael Thomas because I'm assuming that's the Mike T you're talking about, so that's how I'm directing this answer. I think he could play in the NFL again, but he probably wants to get off Twitter if he wants somebody to take a shot on him. Um, no, I think McCoy was the linchpin, and that's where it started. Um, and I think also teams were, and this is kind of around the league with that wide zone scheme. So it's probably getting to the point again, adjustments and people starting to figure it out. You got to adjust to the adjustments. Um, that they seem to be relying, trying to go heavy, trying to go as many as they can in the box, especially with D linemen. Fangio kind of did that too. As you see it around the league, other teams trying to do it. Carolina was doing it to us at certain points today, also, by the way. And just playing those coverages back there where you're just trying not to give up the big play, willing to give up the shorter play. And I think that's where we've struggled. Um, being able to get open in that intermediate area, like flip it around what Carolina was able to do a couple times today, where we were sitting back, very similar style with that zone, and they were just kind of like settling up in the dead space, catching the ball, and a couple times turning it into yards after the catch. Something we emphasized before the season started. I haven't looked at the numbers lately, but for a while it was way better than it ever was the last couple of years. But we seem to have gotten away from that. Losing Shaheed was a big, huge part of that. Excuse me one second. Um, having Olave in and out is part of that. Having to use the tight ends earlier to help so much on the tackles, a little bit because we've done that less. And, it's just kind of talking about Penning and Fuaga, but for the most part, that they're haven't been as bad as we thought they were going to be. And we kind of have letting them one-on-ones, and yeah, they still have their issues, but for the most part, you can go long stretches of the game without noticing either one of them, which typically means for an offensive tackle, he's at least holding his own and he's not screwing anything up too badly. And since we've been able to do less of that, you've seen Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau be able to get involved in the offense and make some of those plays. So I think it's a combination of things. All of these hitting, the injuries, especially on interior. I think we've done a little better with Ruiz coming back. I think he's a key part of what's going on. And I think McCoy getting back would fix more of it, and then you might see more. But without Shaheed there, yeah, blown off the top, that went a long way to doing it. And I know Tipton's fast and MVS is fast and all, but they're not I mean, Shaheed is special. He's one of those guys that put it to you this way. Talking about the salary cap, you want to not get caught up in extending guys and giving them contracts to keep them around for a few years. He's one we really need to do. You want to lock him down. Um, I can tell you this much. I can give you, even though I'm not a lawyer, I can give you the lawyer answer. It depends how the contract's written. It depends on the language. It could be specifically written with some guardian clause to keep, because this is why I say that, because teams would be doing that all the time instead of firing their head coach and paying him out. They just demote him and pay him less. So I have a feeling some type of standard clause probably exists that wouldn't allow you to do that, because otherwise, why wouldn't teams do it all the time? Um, at this point, I don't know if interim really matters. As long as it's not DA, you're probably stepping up. Defending 11, so you can defend the quarterback, helps. Um, but the other thing is, rewind it all the way back to OTAs, and I'm gonna use Derek Carr as one of the mouthpieces that's saying this. Um, and through training camp and everything else, that Janoko and Kubiak, massively huge on quarterbacks placing the ball where it's supposed to be. To the point of the earlier question, when we had the explosive offense, a lot of that was going on. Balls were where they needed to be. In other words, not only to the right receiver, but hitting them where they could go yak after they caught it, or finding those spots when teams were trying to play that whole, hey, we're going to stop the run and we're just not going to give up a big play over the middle, where you did get an Olave or somebody coming out of the backfield or whatever in space where they were able to catch the ball. And even though it didn't go for 40 yards a touchdown, it went for 15, move the chains and keep going. And at certain times, all three of our quarterbacks, in varying degrees, have done okay with that. A few times, especially Cora earlier in the year, Hayner when he came in for Denver, in relief in Denver, Rattler, a couple of series in the Tampa Bay, you saw what they wanted, where it was just like, pump, just hitting the right receiver on time, on target, on task, not really screwing the play up. It also see where they've been missing horribly. Couple of bad throws have gotten Olave lit up, and now he's got a real concussion issue. Other throws getting away from him, turning into turnovers, stuff like that. Um, so yeah, a quarterback that fits the system perfectly, probably the closest one on the roster would be Rattler for what he could do. Then probably Hayner. Actually, I know they've tried to change as much as the offense as they could to fit Carr, and that could be part of the problem. Too, that the changes aren't making it work right. I don't really know. But there is a lot to unpack there to talk about and going, yeah, it the cumulative of it, accumulation of all these things, and even going back to the injuries and everything, is you get what you get now on offense. And at times it looks good. Even today, there were times where You're like, shit, if you could do this for 4 quarters, even with the crappy defense, you'd be able to stay in games. But it's for whatever reason, it's just unsustainable. And then eventually we start having the stupid penalties and the stupid decisions that creep into and make it worse. Um, I don't know, man. I'm thinking fire everybody, build around Hayball is like the new mantra. But if we could blame the punter and that would be it, yeah, I'd be all for it. But yeah, man, he had a great run today for first down. It's like that was and during that stretch, that was probably the best thing we did offensively for about a quarter and a half was him faking the punt. Yeah, I agree. I think he has played pretty good overall. Um, but like I'm saying, it you might be seeing more development and um, more natural. Where I mean, think about it. He basically had 3 weeks, 4 weeks till OTA started. And before that, he's trying to get drafted as high as he can as a left tackle in the NFL. So pretty much everything he's doing after college on that part of the offseason is I'm going to be a left tackle in the NFL. Show up. No, you're going to be a right tackle. I mean, swap that reverse, a right tackle. No, you're going to be a left tackle. I think he's capable of more than I mean. There's people way know more about this than I do. Said, yeah, he's capable. It might have just been a slower progression. Might have been better. Is the point I was trying to make, and let him catch into it. And you've seen that before with other really good left tackles that sometimes start even as a guard or a right tackle and eventually make the switch. I think that full off season helps him out way more. Um, yes, he did look bad today. He hasn't looked bad the last few games, and there are some way worse. I'm sorry to say there are worse tackles in the NFL than he is. So it could be worse. No and no. Not interested in either one in any way, shape, or form. That I agree. But I also need I need an NFL coach that is a full-time NFL coach. Nothing against Prime personally. I actually like him, but in the world of dedicated coaches that eat, breathe, live it for um, pretty much 24/7 year round, and a lot of your successful NFL coaches are, and I can tell you Dennis Allen ain't one of them. Um, yeah, and actually, I think Prime's better off. I actually think he's better off in college doing what he's doing because when you say leader of men, one thing I do think about Prime is he's looking out for those guys beyond their football career, and especially in college where their football career is going to end normally the majority of them the last game they play. So, but you never know. Yeah, Trey. I just my problem is I don't know how much slack to give him really. It's a hard read. Um, I tell you this much: his wheel spin when it comes calling the plays. I wish he'd stop calling reverses for the immediate future because they have not been working at all this year. But personnel is the big one because he made no bones about it from the moment he showed up and hasn't changed his tune about it at all. About trying to get the players that are available to him right now to fit what he's trying to do. And like I said with Carr, I think there's a lot of that going on with Carr. And I know it sounds easy, but then some guys who are fit your system really well has now changed, and now it's a little off for them, and it's a very hard read to make. Again, if we had everybody healthy and everything had been, I'm not saying we could what we did the first 2 weeks we could have kept doing, but if you'd have been stayed mostly or yeah more healthy than you actually were, and had these guys playing together for longer, I think right now you would. definitely be able to go yay, nay, or yeah, I like what he's doing in the scheme, but I don't like his play calling. It would be a little easier to figure all that out. I wouldn't be opposed, by the way, um, to if you change course and fire everybody, GM, head coach comes in and wants to keep him in place, but I wouldn't argue against it. I guess that's the best way I can say it. But if they clean house too and start over, I don't know if I could argue against that either. Yeah, that is true. But right now, you got to find your fun, I guess, as my mom used to tell me, go outside and find your fun. Well, right now we're finding our fun, going, God, we need changes, and what will they be, and what will they look like? I'm getting tired, Deagle. I'm getting tired of waiting like 60 seconds right now, expecting something to change. I want to. I need the change. Y- I'm going to assume that's total sarcasm. Otherwise, I have no response to that because it honestly wouldn't deserve one if you're serious. So it is cathartic though, because I feel better than I did earlier when we started this, kind of talking through this. Um, it's amazing to me that the Saints fans are more unified on recognizing where all your issues are in the team, but the ones running it are just you know uh, someone said earlier arrogant. I swear it's almost narcissistic, really. Some of these, I mean, but it's to the point. I don't know what to do anymore other than just go shit. Let's let's live the pipe dream. If what could happen, what could potentially happen. So um, I don't know if it will happen, and that's the let's see if I can figure out where it is. But a little handy dandy over the cap. This right here is basically where we're sitting at the cap now. We're 61.5 million over based on that being estimated. But this is the thing. This is where it started. If you read earlier in the week or heard, supposedly teams were calling the Saints about trading for Marshawn Lattimore, and I thought Lattimore's contract was kind of so screwed up right now in where we are with, especially with this projected number for next year. It's like, no, that'll get worse if we trade Marshawn Lattimore. Well, this is overthecap.com. They have these little handy dandy calculator thing. Um, Short version, the way his contract is structured, they have what they call options in them. And I don't understand how the options work. I tried for an hour to Google it to try to figure it out. But basically, assuming this is correct, if you were to trade Lattimore before the trade deadline, um, his cap situation isn't devastating at all. In fact, it starts changing these numbers. You've created cap space this year. You're sitting a little more next year, but it's not really that big a deal. But you started moving some cap space a lot bigger in 2026 and 2027. And it's like, well, that right there makes it kind of doable. And you get if teams being the key word, because if you have multiple teams calling and asking and you have a market, then you can really have a chance to get closer to his actual trade value. And obviously, of course, this is assuming the hamstring isn't totally screwed and he can't play again at some point this year, especially towards the playoff, because those are the teams that are kind of looking for him or would be looking into him. But really the only other guy you have that fits in that category, if I could find him on the stupid list, is Chase Young, who I think
would definitely have a market if you were to put him in trade. I think you can get value for him. He doesn't change your cap numbers a whole lot, but this is the reason why I say he may have to go because he's basically gone at the end of the year. He's a free agent. The only way you can keep him is you're probably going to have to pay him. Going rate for an edge rusher, 25 years old. You may be looking at 5 years, 15 mils, rolling up some type of 75 million contract, which you cannot afford to do. And you really can't afford to do it is if he hasn't. I think he's played pretty well at times this year, but he hasn't totally blown up numbers. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it, obviously. But I think potentially he could do it again. But if he doesn't and you give him that big of a contract, you're definitely going to find yourself back in the same boat with big contracts that you can't move, that's putting you in cap hell, which is the whole situation you're trying to get up now. So if he would agree to a club friendly contract, yeah, you then you have a real decision. But if he's going to be looking for the big money, I don't think you can afford to pay him to keep it, and he's a tradable asset, so you can move on from him. And what's going to happen after that is there's some other moves you could make in there, but kind of what I was working out, that's all you need to do. But when you get to 2025, this is the tough part, and you have to make the decision right now that if you really want to clear your cap space, the biggest decision you have to make is whether or not you want Derek Carr to be on your team next year. He's got the biggest number that you can move that can work for you. Because if you designate him next year as a post June 1st cut where you get to take half the hit in 2025 and the rest in 2026, you just cut this number in half. And all of a sudden it's starting to get real workable. And you've still created a little more space in 2026 and 2027. And you can roll through at this point and start. Oh, sorry. One other thing you need to do. We all know Ryan Ramczyk is, all intents and purposes, retired, and that was a restructure of his contract, so we'd be able to split his money between 2025 and 2026. So he's another one where you can basically, he either retires and you designate it after June 1st, or you flat out cut him after designate after June 1st. Doesn't matter either way, you're going to split his money. And you've just dropped that number even lower. And you've changed these a little bit, but not really enough to matter. From there, you can start cutting people like Jamal Williams before you shave $1 million. Long story short is if you cut Jamal at this point, after cutting Jamal Williams, if you cut Cedric Wilson, Nathan Shepard, and Kalen Saunders, which I would show you, but I don't feel like going dig them all out of here. This 12 million right here is 6.4, I believe. You're like 300,000 over the cap at that point. That's a cap savings. If you don't spend any more cap money this year, that carries over, and pretty much right there, you're about 300,000 over once you take that deduction. And if you're talking about it like restructuring Olave, Shaheed rather, or I think Alante Taylor needs to be extended. Those are the guys where you can play the cap gymnastics a little bit and go, well, we're going to give them some upfront money. We're going to give them because they're young enough and they're good enough and they're showing that they belong in the NFL and they can make plays for you. And ideally, you're thinking they're going to keep getting better. Well, those are the type guys where you can do these crazy contracts that we were given to older players that had nowhere hope of ever giving you the production towards the amount of money you were paying them. These guys potentially could. So if you do that, you create a little more cap space. You're under the cap. You're probably not going to jump into free agency and really sign anybody. But you are working on, and you would probably take another year of doing the same thing, of making some trades during the season, rolling it back around, having to designate, deciding before the previous season even ends, like you would have to do with Derek Carr and say he's not going to be here. Pick the next highest guy with that much money that you can do that with post June 1st designation, split his money over 2 years, and keep working down. I don't have the time and the energy to run through the whole scenario to get there, but just that little bit. You're talking about 8 players you're getting off your roster by June 1st of 2025. 2 of which have the possibility of bringing you draft picks into 2025 because you're going to need draft capital to pull this off, and you're going to have to draft wisely when you do it with those picks. So you're going to have to replace 8 people. Ideally, if you have 8 picks in 2025, you're going to take 8 rookies on first year rookie salaries, which is a whole lot easier to work with, especially the guys third round and below, to help develop your team. And when you need to get rid of them, you can get rid of them to almost no penalty whatsoever. So the hope is Ms. Gale and Loucher realize this, realize they've got to do something fast, give the mandate to Mickey, get Lattimore, and I think Chase Young's the other one that you can do that with. Get this ball rolling by Tuesday, and let's start. It's a rebuild. It's not a reset. But if you do it right, and you're going to need a little luck, but you can't change course once you go down this path. This is the path you have to go down until you get out of the cap hell. You know who's done it recently is the Raiders. That's how Derek Carr wound up here in the first place. It's basically what they did. What you can do is what the Raiders did, because I don't think they did a particularly good job of hiring a GM or a head coach. And so I don't know how much this is going to help them. But the first part of how they got clear of all that is very similar to what we would have to do in this situation. To me, this is the path you have to go down. And if Mickey doesn't want to do it and resist it, like I said earlier, decisions have to be made. And anybody who says, no, that's not how we do, that's not how we do it. Again, the response needs to be, well, then you need to go find another organization to do it in because you're not going to do it here. So that's my hope. That's my good news, that I thought literally there was no way you could move Lattimore in any of these contracts. But again, Kai Hartley, the man, apparently did some magic in it. It was like, well, there's one big one you can move by Tuesday and start the building blocks of getting yourself out under this mess where you can operate as a team that can redevelop itself, reorganize itself, rejuvenate itself, whatever you want to say, and try to start working back to what we once were, but we're nowhere near right now. And yes, I know you have questions, and so I'm gonna catch back up, but I did want to get to that before we broke it off for tonight, and at least plant the seed. There's some hope and optimism somewhere. We have to hope the people in charge are going to make the call and get the ball rolling on it. I think if he had some real head coach, Paul's, yeah, and I question that if he does, but I I keep hating to bring up the ghost of Sean Payton past, but the clip from the after we won the Super Bowl show, and I believe it was Rob Ninkovich, who we eventually cut, and he went to have an awesome career with New England. But the clip where they showed where Ninkovich is coming off the field and Peyton is in his face about picking up a 15-yard penalty. Now, do you think you're worth a 15-yard penalty and just chewing his ass? God, I need to see that again on our sideline. And I do not think DA has the balls to ever walk up to any of his players or head coaches and do that. And we need somebody on the sideline who will. Because I think that's one of the reasons why Sean did that. He was able to build that culture. And the players who couldn't take it, they moved on from. The players who could, he built around, and they became, the leaders. And go, hey, this is just the way it is. You want to win here. This is how we're going to do it. I think, and it may not be in the exact form because I don't think you can recreate it, but I think, as you're saying, if you want to call it the acumen, but balls, that if you don't have them, nobody else is, and it's going to be real hard to win football games, and you got to get them back. Yeah, I think that's T Dirty. Yes, right now I think we're lower than trash. I mean, feel it what you want. It's like I hope we're trash by the end of the season. Today was just. I mean, I don't see how it can get any lower than today. You had the biggest epic fail ever, ever, and definitely in the last 20 years of a team outplaying its opponent in just about every meaningful stat you could pull up, and by a lot in some of them, and still managed to lose the fucking game. How? And yes, it's frustrating. I thought I was kind of out of it, but now that we're talking about it, it's like, God damn, how do we lose? How does that happen? Other than the fact you got people in the organization that have to go and have to go soon. Yeah. Um, we seem to think there's one way and only one way to do it, and that it'll never catch up to you and bite you on the ass. Wrong. It will. It can. It has. We need to fix it. Um, okay, I have a theory on this. And again, my opinion, and I can't prove it. But just knowing what I know, believing my that I don't have lying eyes and believing I saw what I saw and knowing the personalities involved. I think he's a good or was. I think what he's trying to do might be a little outdated and he needs to make some changes. And as we keep talking about, anybody in charge around here doesn't like change and they don't want to do it. Um, but I gotta wonder because his head coach at his time, ghost of Sean Payton, ruled with an iron fist. Okay, let's make no mistake about it. There wasn't shit going on that sideline or anywhere else that he didn't know about with his approval. And if he didn't approve, like we were saying earlier, he damn sure let somebody know about it. So my theory is, my feeling, my opinion, absolutely zero iota proof of this, was he's sitting on that headset and he's jumping in on the headset when he needs to. But he's listening to what's going on between DC calling the plays and the other coaches, right? And I think he'd buzz in and say, if they were going to play coverage and he wanted pressure, he's going to buzz in and say, no, goddamn it, bring pressure. So I think DA is the guy that once the head man would give him directions, then he could start moving the X's and O's around and make it happen. I think the biggest problem with DA, and a biggest problem with a lot of coordinators who are good at what they do, but then they get the head coaching gig, is without that person over their shoulder, not 100% of the time, but in key moments, jumping in and going, no, 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 that's not what you're going to do. You're going to do this. Make it happen. I need pressure. I need the quarterback on the ground. You figure out how to do it. That's your job, but I'm telling you what I need. And you got to go do it. Oversimplifying, obviously. But I think that's what the dynamic was. And I think that worked for DA. And now that I swear to God, at times they put the camera on him on the sideline when we need something from him or a big decision. And it's like the 1,000-yard stare that he's staring off into Never Never Land. Sometimes in his press conferences, I get the same impression that he's thinking to himself, I want to be anywhere but here right now. Buddy, that they're paying you big money to make those decisions and make them correctly and win games, and you're not doing it. Yeah. Um, I do. I do think there's I really wish I could have been a fly on the wall listening to what the team captains and DA were talking about last week, which I found here's an interesting thing too. Um, I don't remember who said it, whether it was DA or one of the players when they were talking about it, but they were like, yeah, we meet once a month. Okay. Here's another bitch gripe about I really wish that comment hadn't been said. If things are going really good and you don't need to have a lot of conversation, once a month's probably okay. The way shit's been going the last 7 weeks, probably once a day is what you need to sit down and have these conversations, because you got a whole lot of shit to fix and ain't none of it getting fixed. And if we're gonna, we'll meet on the first of every month and have a committee meeting about it. why bother? They just don't even have the meeting because nothing's going to get done, and damn sure ain't going to get done to help you win games. But to your point, Northern, absolutely a lot of trust involved in that, and I don't think any of it exists at this point anymore. Possibly, but here's the thing. Especially when you've got a first round draft pick next to your name. People are all in the NFL are always somebody somewhere in some organization. I think say this about ours in the last few years are going to make a dumb decision over it. My favorite example is, and I do not know which roster he was on, if he's still out there, but Laquan Treadwell, who is still in the league playing offense for somebody. I don't care if they're playing him league minimum. He's a straight bum, but yet he still keeps getting the job because, well, he was a former first round pick. Somebody somewhere must have saw something in him. So somebody somewhere will think they, especially if they're making a playoff run, will want Chase Young. And to the point, Frisco needed him for that stretch run when they made the trade for him last year. And he kind of balled out, especially in the playoffs. He had a great Super Bowl. Yeah, absolutely, Brian. It is. It's got to get cleaned out from the top. You know, like we were saying earlier, we don't want to bang on Miss Gale, but she's got to get involved and start firing people. I mean, it's there's no getting around it. I mean, I think Saints fans and people have jokingly said this is the definite Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yes, but now the insanity is us as fans because we're desperately crying for the insanity to stop, and they just won't do it. It's got to come from the top. It's got to come from above Mickey, whoever that is, because I don't think Mickey's going to do it. I think Mickey's content to just sit there and keep trying to prove that he's the genius he is, that this is going to work. He just needs time. Well, it ain't time I'm willing to give him anymore. Yeah, Northern. I think they have to make decisions. They have to make some moves. Now it's tricky and it gets complicated real fast on who you can and can't, who helps you. But again, Kai Hartley's name's come up several times tonight. He knows it. He can figure it out. 2 seasons, but also part of it is who has what, where, how much in the way they construct the roster is that jigsaw puzzle of we're taking a little bit here and it fits together this way. So the thing is, when you deconstruct it, you have to do it the right way also. I think Cam, and I'd have to continue this process where I stop. But I think if Cam is going to retire, I think you can get away with it after June 1st. But the deal is what we were talking about earlier, you you have to be under the cap when the league closes. So these are all moves you start with Tuesday. And if the league is, I don't know the date, March 15th, by March 14th, 11:59 p.m., you have to make all these moves so you're under the cap. Otherwise, you're totally screwed when the season opens and you're over the cap. That's just to get you to the point where you're under the cap. Now, once you're under the cap, those decisions you're talking about, yeah, and I do think he would be one of them, and you would do it after June 1st. But I think his numbers fit. I'd actually have to literally sit there and play with this and figure it out. And that's not counting, too. You may have to stagger retirements also. Here's the other thing. And we might be only be able to do this one more time before the NFL gets pissed about it and says, don't do that again. Because that's kind of what we did with Ramchek. So we restructured his contract, pushed it back. I IR'd him. Hey, he's not going to play this year, but we're hoping this gets better and he may have a chance to come back next year, which is pretty much going. If he'd have retired this year, there's no way we're under the cap. There's no way we're getting under the cap. We have to do this song and dance, stretch it out, and he makes a retirement. But if Cam, I mean, seriously, there's 4 people you got to look at. Cam, DeMario, Honey Badger, and Hill, who are all at the age, who are all stacking up some injuries and some other stuff that could all fit into that category in one way, shape, or form. So you may have to have 2 retire. And then you may have to tell one of the other ones, and this is assuming they all come right at each other within a year or so of each other, going, you're going to have pull a calf severely, go under a procedure. Then we're going to have to IR you and tell everybody we think he can come back next year if the procedure works. But oh no, it didn't. He's going to have to retire. So basically, I'm going to call it you pull a ram check. You might have to pull a ram check one more time. I think if you do it twice, like I said, the league is going to be like, no, 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 no. Stop that shit. We know what you're doing. Stop. But you might have to go to that well one more time. And to the point, who and when and how might have to determine the order of how it's going to happen. I kind of got to wonder if James Hurst bring this up because he retired right before the draft. If that also wasn't in the mix, that he, again, opinion, don't know this for sure, but there is a possibility he knew, let them know all along, hey, I'm retiring. And they went, hold on, don't make an announcement yet. Let us get into this cap thing and see how it shakes out. And do we need him to retire before June 1st or we want to retire after June 1st? That sort of thing. If indeed that did happen, I can almost guarantee when you're talking about the retirements on those guys, that conversation is going to come up, I'm sure. Yeah, I absolutely need to do it. The tough part is doing it. Teams who have not put themselves in this, because I mean, you got to understand the reality of dead money is, you know, through the prorating of signing bonuses and all that stuff is basically simplest terms. It's very complicated how they pull it off, and I only understand maybe 10% of it. People who fully understand it typically work for NFL teams and jobs like what Kai Hartley does. But basically, they were take Alvin's contract, $15.5 million. He got $15.5 million cash over 5 years. He got that the day he signed it. But that 15.5 million didn't hit all this year when he received the cash because we prorated that signing bonus. I think it's 5 years, so it would be 3.1 per year. So 3.1 million of that hit it, 3.1 per year for the next 4 years. They have that strung up all over the places. And think about some of the big contracts and mega signing bonuses that people got. And so when you look at the total number for a year, one guy might have a $10 million proration sitting there. Somebody else might have 25. Somebody who has a huge contract just happens to see a year where it's only $1 million, but the sum total is it's all going to hit your cap that year. So what you're really doing is you're borrowing future cap space to be able to stay under the cap in the current year. Because we paid you 15 million. So you should hit us for 15 million this year, but we're going to do this little trick where only 3 million of it hits us this year and 3 million each of the next 4 years. So again, when you go to undo it and do what you're talking about, you got to do it right. Because if you do it wrong, I can give you this example, and I do not remember the team of the player, but I remember he was a guard. But when I was doing the research this morning, trying to figure all this out, I did come across a story. It's 2014, something like that. So about 10, 11 years ago, some team made some move with an offensive lineman that the league signed off on. And the error or the intentional omission, however, which way it actually went, making the move they made actually put them over the cap. Which once you're over the cap, you're subject to league fines and penalties from the league, which is fines and taking draft picks. The league will not sign off. I think it was a trade, but will not sign off on it because it has to be approved by the league if it causes you to go over the cap. But because either they made an error or they tried to hide the truth of what was really going on, it was something like $100,000 over the cap. Well, the league found out about it later, got really pissed, made him get cap compliant. Sorry, didn't say what they did, but they had to do something, get cap compliant right now. League ended up fining them. I think it was $1 million or something like that, and they took a 3rd-round draft pick. That was over $100,000. So if you do this wrong and you make that mistake or you try to slide one under them, and that's probably worse if that's what they think you're doing, the amount of money we're talking about, you end up losing your draft picks, you receive fines. It's just a whole mess. So the theory all along, I agree with you the whole time. I just didn't think we were going to do it. And I had to spend some time on this, trying to figure out how you can do it. Hopefully, Kai Hartley would have this spreadsheet where he's literally just typing numbers and moving people, and it's giving him an answer like that. I I wouldn't enjoy. I don't. Some of the names on the list, some of them I'm like indifferent to, and they probably do need to go. But yeah, to the point, you got to start somewhere. And there's probably better ways to do it. Believe me, this is not my full time job like people in the Saints front office. But it leads me to believe that at least if you start with Lattimore, you could figure out a way to do it and ease the pain, as they say, as this process goes on, and within conceivably by 2026, maybe 2027, you've got all that fixed and you've rebuilt your team where you can now we can start getting a little more involved in free agent signings as long as they're competent, good contracts when you're doing it and you don't put yourself right back in this situation. And ultimately, the real truth is we know they got him in this situation to keep Drew paid and around. And at that point, you had that Super Bowl window from 2017 to will be convenient 2020, but 2019 was probably the last realistic year. Bad things happened in 2020 that caused revenues to fall. The salary cap fell. Drew retired. All this hit at one time, put us in cap hell. But let's be honest. The real problem was, in retrospect, and this is something you got to look out for in the future, that window was closing. So at some point, we had to acknowledge the window is closing and act appropriately at that point. Again, I'm feeling like probably after you took that loss in 2019, going all in 2020, probably not the best move. I think at that point, and knowing that Drew was getting close to retirement, going play one more. And I'm not saying you that's a reset that they're talking about. It's going, got to move on from this, and this. We have to have a good draft. We're going to have to add these guys, but we all have to do it within the framework of this amount of money because we're trying to get rid of cap space. And once that's gone, then we can the reset. Then we can start over. You could have did it in a year. I'm pretty sure. Now you're looking at 2, hopefully. Oh, thank you, Robert. Yes, very nicely put. I think I've been saying that all night, just not that succinctly. So thank you. Um, but I kind of felt, yeah, within the last 2 weeks, this should have been the goal of the organization at this point moving forward. And then knowing you're getting to this point and you're going to be moving on from people, this is what kills me. This is how I think Mickey could have saved a lot of his wrath, or the wrath being directed at him, and keep being Mickey and slumming a lot of wrong under the shadows. That if he'd have fired DA and started implementing these moves, so as we were falling into this situation, we'd be like, okay, look, it sucks. We had to fire the head coach. We had to trade Lattimore. We had to do this. We had to do that. We already, because one of the ways that big money guys are going to get cut next year is they're going to get sent home or made inactive because a lot of them have that guaranteed for injury portion of the contract, and you don't want that shit kicking in. So, because then it makes the math even worse to figure out. So, you can't come to practice. You can't come. In fact, I remember, right? That's what the Raiders did to Derek Carr the last couple of games of the year, just for that reason. Go, no, we don't need any extra guaranteed money kicking in due to some type of injury that's going to screw this whole thing up. So that's typically how that's where they're going. So if you would have, if you're Mickey Loomis and you had fired DA, found a decent interim coach going, hey, go shake things up and we're going to be moving some people. Trade the guys you can trade that set you down this path and literally start sending people home until 2025. I think that would have rallied the fan base going, we're probably still going to suck for the rest of this year. We're going to have a good draft pick. Here's an important thing we haven't talked about. We're going to be getting some young guys on the field and getting them better and more playing time because, even before Kool-Aid got hurt, I am bitching that he's on the active roster and playing 4 or 5 special teams. Good God, find the guy. Look, I know he's not the second coming to Darrelle Revis yet, but at some point, let's get him on the field when we can and get him to try to go make some plays because he probably can do it. And then what we got was when we had to use him in San Diego, it seemed almost like at times he was confused out there. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to happen as a rookie, but I much rather would it happen in some situational spots where you can get him in there and develop him like we're talking about, but not at the point where he's got to start on the outside. And some of that stuff he should have been trying to figure out when you could give him those spots to play. Now he's doing it on the fly and in the middle of a game on every play. Again, this is kind of going back to what I was talking to is you got to develop the plan of how you're going to develop them. And you got to recognize, is it going to be game 1, game 8, game 17, or game 1 of next season before you can get him to that point? And if you don't do any of that, all the draft picks in the world ain't going to help you because you're going to keep screwing them up. Yeah, not sure. He's one of the guys. I'm not really sure what the question is, or unless you're actually talking to him and I missed it. But um, well, if he stays in charge and Mickey stays in charge, it's safe to say we might be picking first each of the next 2 years. And I hate to see what we're going to wind up with. Now that's going to work. Oh, okay, okay. Now I get it. Sorry, a little slow here. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. Um, okay. I knew you were older Northern, but we're what 5 years apart? Okay. Yeah. For those of y'all who are new here, I'm the old guy and Northern's the older guy. So we have old timey wimey discussions every now and then. So just bear with. Hey, who that hemisphere? Right now, everybody that unfortunately, but hopefully we're solving the Saints' problems and getting them better for the next couple of years. Excuse me. People who aren't good jobs don't get to pick in the top 5 2 years in a row. That really should be said. Shouldn't have to be said. But keep trolling away. We'll probably keep humoring you. Um, I tell you what. I'll tell you what. If I had just a tenth of his money, I'd be happy to become a regular Dr. Phil. Yeah, it's at this point you either pay now or you pay later if you keep him around. But one way or the other, it's going to cost you money or potentially more money later on in the greater scheme of things. I that wouldn't shock me. In fact, dang it, I'm trying to remember. I think when Gruden was fired by the Raiders, their special teams coach ended up being the interim. I know it's happened recently. I don't think it's been like within the last year or two, but I remember thinking special teams coach really. Um, and I isn't Brian Dayball a former special teams coach, or was he the one, or the one of the previous Giants coaches? I don't know. I don't really follow what's going on that close to New York, but yeah. So apparently that's a thing. So and look, Rizzy gives me the impression that he would get in your face in a heartbeat. So if he's a guy that can do that, and honestly, I don't know if like I don't know who would want it, but he might be one of the guys that would because he kind of seems a little crazy, and I think you'd have to be a little crazy to come off the staff and be the interim of this team right now. But I think a little crazy is what we need. I will say this about Jeff Duncan. Um, think of all the guys that kind of follow I call them the usual suspects that follow the team. I feel like he has like one of the most direct pipelines into somebody in the front office or access to or something in there. Um, I think others have more with players and, coaches and all, but I think it seems like if I'm basing this on, it seems like when the front office needs something out there, it seems like they go to Jeff Duncan. That's what I'm basing this on. He seems to get that kind of thing first. So when it comes to stuff like if that's the source, when it comes to stuff like really kind of knowing contracts and stuff like that, I'd put a lot of faith in whatever he says. Oh man, y'all are keeping me up tonight. I should have made some coffee. Um, oh, I take that deal so fast. I don't care if they were. Hey, we got 3 7th-round picks this year. We'll give you for DA. Take them gladly. Um, I don't even know how. I don't if that were to be true. I don't even know how you take that phone call because I'm if I'm on the other end of that. Some team calls me and asks me that. I'm thinking, which one of my friends is trying to punk me and fuck with me right now? That's like that can't be. There's no way they could be serious. So even if it was a serious offer, I'd probably blow it off as somebody's practical joke. That's a great question. One I've been asking, but there is definitely, the problem in training and conditioning and mental. There's something wrong there. Okay. We've had these problems before in the past. The one I keep thinking of is we couldn't figure out Delvin Breaux back in the day had a fractured leg. And, you know, Sean being Sean was kind of pissed that the medical people tell him there's really nothing wrong with him. He should be practicing and playing, trying to get him out there. And we all know what happened there. And I think ultimately he ended up suing the team or something, kind of career ending situation out of negligence. I don't know if it's I hope to God it's not the same that we got rid of him after that, but I honestly don't know who it is. I've seen Nick Underhill talk about this a little bit, and I think he may have mentioned the name, and I just don't remember it. But it's not necessarily auctioneers. Apparently, according to him, players, it sounds like almost they have an option. And I think today actually he was addressing this on Twitter or yesterday. Sounds like if they want to stay in town or something, auctioneers doesn't. Supposedly they have a really good sports medicine department. I do not know one way or the other if that's correct or not. Yeah, because I think he said even Dr. James Andrews works there now. But players can opt out and go somewhere else because I think Shaheed went to California to have his procedures and all done. So I don't know who it is, who's it supposed to be, how good they are, how good they aren't, should we change? But I feel like that is a conversation that needs to be had throughout the organization, that there could be some real problems there, especially how it takes so long for some of our guys that have some of these injury issues to get back on the field. Or they keep reoccurring. As soon as you get them back on the field, it happens. It just keep there's something wrong. Somewhere there's something very, very wrong that they need to figure out. Um, uh, yes. Now, in all fairness, those of us who were a product of the 70s and 80s, there was I tell people who didn't really understand the difference. Um, like some of my nephews and all who are younger, you know, back in the 70s and 80s, the saying was, are you hurt or you injured? You know, because if you're injured, we'll get you out and get you some medical attention. But if you're hurt, get back in there and do your job, or we're going to find somebody else who does. Well, that, right or wrong, at the time, that's the way it was. That mentality is definitely not in football, I think, at any level right now anymore. Um, so that Iron Man tough guys of the 70s, I agree with you on that, but I think that had a little bit to do with it because people were really worried that they would lose. You have that expression, well, you don't lose your job to injury. Bullshit. I think there's a long list, starting with Wally Pipp when he lost his spot to Lou Gehrig. No, there is a such thing as people losing their jobs due to injury. So it was a real thing. It's kind of got phased out and that expression came up. So I think that's accurate now. But back in the day, hell no, you could lose your job because of injury. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I would think if I answered the joke and somebody wanted to trade the rights for him, I would think it is a practical joke. I'm being pumped. Oh, yeah, he was Northern. I forgot about that. And I'm not a fan of his at all. Um, just generally in a sense, he seems to be the guy that for whatever reason has some good teams, can have some great seasons. They do some amazing shit, especially since I place bets on them to win a playoff game or to get to the Super Bowl. And he somehow manages to blow it through play calling or decision makings, or my favorite, going for two too early in the game when if he's just kicking extra points and the game plays out the same way, he's actually got a lead at the end instead of trying to score a touchdown because he's down 4. I just don't get him sometimes. I don't. Because he's like the good coach that just or appears to be a good coach, definitely a good regular season coach because it's such thing as it exists. But God, they've had some other than the Super Bowl win he does have, they've had some teams that I thought was every bit as good as that one. And God knows with Lamar Jackson, he had a better quarterback than he did with Joe Flacco. But yet he just can't seem to close the deal for whatever. 9:30. So 9:30. In fact, been rolling for about 2 hours. I don't think I can stay much longer because I did make a pot of coffee and I'm going to be needing it at this point. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I think some of the good things we do see on offense, I do think some of the things that they tried to do, Janoko, Benton, those guys that kind of new attitude. Um, I think a little bit of it took for at least for a little while. So I would like to give him the full blow. And look, again, I don't know if DA really empowers his assistant coaches and his players. I don't think he does by not intentionally, but just by the way he is and the way he speaks and his words and actions and his decision making and everything else that they end up losing traction. But yeah, he could be a guy if you put him in charge, at least interim, and go. Maybe he could shake it up and he can be that guy because I think that's what you need a bull by the horn, get in their face, some passion. Now, passionate, he's so dead monotone. But then again, so is Bill Belichick. So who the hell knows? This is a good one to end on because brother-in-law, we're having that discussion because I know it's the fourth quarter. I know you start looking at possessions at that point. We seem to have taken control of the game, I thought. So you're thinking, well, we get the 2-point conversion, go up 7, we get it back, we kick a field goal, we're up 10. You're having those conversations. Um, I'm a person that if it's before the fourth quarter, unless you're down a whole lot where you're needing 8 points a clip, touchdown, 2 points to get yourself back in the game, you take the extra point and then just kind of as the game rolls out, how's it going? And then in the fourth quarter, at some point, it's automatic. You have to go for 2 because of the way the math and the number of possessions worked out. So I want to say it was around the 12-minute mark when that happened. I kind of felt like, I think Sports Accountant was in agreement with me. He maybe should kick the extra point there, but um, I don't know. I think personally that's the way I'd have landed. Maybe at the 5-minute mark or getting in the 4-minute mark, maybe something a little different at that point. But I mean, it was very early. You barely had run played any of the fourth quarter at that point. Going, it just might have been take the extra point, move on at that junction. Oh, I didn't even know he had the assistant head coach title. Yeah, probably by default. That's and look, it's again, it's gonna have to be kind of somebody who wants it. Um, it could be good or it could be bad if you're the interim, but he's got less to lose as a special team coach because I think, generally speaking, besides the Harbaugh example and possibly Dayball, whoever the Giants coach was, typically they're not going to be in the head coaching chair anytime soon. So looking horrible as an interim ain't going to bother him. Uh, Kubiak and Woods, the two coordinators, eh, I'd say it might be a little more risk reward for them. So they may, considering the state of the things are going, it might not be enough reward for the risk we'd be taking to do it. Yeah, I mean for the most part, but there are times where you take the points and still find yourself scrambling. So I mean it's a fine line. I don't and I think at a certain point it does kind of become a tried and true, like the analytics guys pulling out and going, yeah. Especially if you not 100% sure you can stop the other team from scoring, which is kind of what I was feeling like at that point in that game. That was some of the most horrible shit. I had kind of forgotten about that. I don't think I forgot about it. I think I was mentally trying to block it out because that was so terrible what went on at the end of the first half. Um, did mention about Alvin running out of bounds earlier. That played into it. But on that and really, you got yourself in a position before that because we had one timeout starting that drive because we had stupidly had to call two before that, or was it we only called one stupid one we had whatever it was. In theory, we should have had all three going into that drive at the very least. Oh yeah, one of them was he needed to stop the clock for them so they could go ahead and score points and trying to set this up. So I kind of felt like at that point that was even though they were getting the ball back after half, typically you want to try to go score. Things had gotten so rocky for us at that point in the game. I think you just wanted to get the hell out of Dodge as fast as you could. Um, so run the ball, stay in bounds when you're running it. If you happen to hit that play and get the chains moving on the first one, then you think about opening it up and what you can do down there. But the intention of we're going to roll down the field and score like we used to do when Drew used to be able to do that with zero timeouts and get you down there and have plenty of time to run your field goal team. The list of quarterbacks, notwithstanding Drew, but who exist that are able to do that is a very small one, and a lot of them have retired from the game. Still a couple around, floating around, obviously in here, but you don't have one on your roster that you can rely on to do that. So your clock management skills, yes, have to realize. Look, either we have the full complement of timeouts and the ability to work the ball down the field and the momentum to do so, because we've been struggling. We might have to get it into halftime and then come out after half and hold them after the kickoff and then retool offense from there. These are all decisions head coach have to make on the fly. And you can't be wasting timeouts and doing or calling it too late, burning time off before you finally, oh, I got a timeout. Let me go ahead and call it. Because I think what 10 seconds or something like that burned off while we're waiting for him to go, oh yeah, I need to call a timeout. Yeah, man, on that it was just a piss poor effort all the way around from him in that whole situation. Like, I can go one of his answers after I think it was after the Atlanta game. Well, if it was working for 58 minutes, why would I want to change it in the last two? Well, because I don't know. They may try to do something different because but they haven't been doing work in the last 58 minutes according to that philosophy. So I've always complained he has no concept of situational football, which leads to sometimes not being. See, and this goes back to what I was telling you about Sean jumping in, not being able to adjust fast enough. Where somebody like Sean would, to your point, would probably quickly realize, hey, bring the pressure on Young. Quit giving the middle to him, and did. Oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I could explain it to you, but I feel like I'd have to relive the last 2 hours, which normally I would do, but it is getting late, and I am getting really to the point where I'm gonna have to call it a night. But yeah, It's Jasher, it's a shit show right now. It is, but hopefully we got to keep hope some kind of way. We've got to help each other get through this. It's like I feel like the live shows now on Sunday night. It's like a support group. You know, we're Saints fans, and we just have to find a way to give each other support, get through this together, and hopefully we can start the turnaround soon and not have to wait 2 years of this before we get around to it. Yeah, that was like the talk of him not being able to quarterback in the NFL because of his lack of height. But um, I'm 5 foot nothing, so believe me, I never discount someone on their ability of being short and not being able to do something. So who knows? Yeah, I don't. Um, I should say I don't follow the Pelicans, not religiously. I'm kind of aware of what's going on, and I hadn't really checked up on them a couple days till yesterday morning, I think. Well, we lost like 3 or 4 starters, like, out of nowhere. I had the same thought you're having, and I'm quite sure it's the same issue, same everything. How do you not recognize the problem and fix the problem, or try to or recognize there is a problem, find out what the problem actually is and fix it? I have no freaking clue, but yeah, to your point, second organization or franchise you own is having similar problems. Yeah, it might be time to ask some serious questions and make some changes in the whole medical staff issue. Ah, I- I'd rather be Dr. Phil, like I said, and have just a portion of his money. Oh, thank y'all for joining. Thank you for joining, Josh. Definitely appreciate it. All the support you've shown. First time here, please go ahead, hit the subscribe and uh, bang me out some likes while we're at it. Make that algorithm love me even more. That's amazing. Y'all have the power of the algorithm to love me. Do you feel like he and Marshawn share the exact same hamstring that just keeps getting hurt over and over? Okay, I can honestly say I've never been to a Dead concert, so and I'm assuming you mean the Grateful Dead, but I know enough about them to know, yeah, that's got to be some wild shit. So and a lot of fun. So I'm hoping that's hey, there's been some wild shit and we had a lot of fun. So yeah. So yeah, good night, Milton. Good night, Northern. Um, Jasher, everybody that joined tonight. Um, and I can't name you all because my memory as an old man is fading fast, especially in the short term. But I do want to thank y'all all for coming tonight and hanging out. Hopefully we helped. It's helped me out a lot because I may be able to sleep tonight and not be quite as pissed off as I was earlier after I went through numb and then got angry and a couple rewired a couple points in this show. But I mean, for the most part, it is frustrating, as somebody mentioned earlier, just to kind of look what's going on and go. It's hard to fix. There's no doubt about that. There's no easy fix. The easy part is recognizing you're having a problem and they're just not doing it. No matter what happens, they just can't wake up and accept that fact. And until that happens, it's going to be a struggle. But you know, if nothing else, we're in it all together. So we will. I'm going to play around with this salary cap thing some more in the next day and see if we actually make any trades on the trade deadline. If we can find something in here to do, pick up some draft capital, move some money, alleviate some issues, and then pick it up from there. Because if we don't, I'm going to be pretty pissed. Who we kidding? And then we know, well, we're not going to address any of these issues till 2025. So I'm hoping that's not the route they take. It's not the correct route. I think anybody can see that. But are they going to do the smart thing? or are they going to do the Saints thing? We're going to find out together. So, till I see y'all next time, I'm Tim. Peace out. Who dat?